What's on the menu in your fantasy world? Gruel, gruel, and lembas? Come now. If your fictional cuisine feels like it was cooked in a single pot, maybe it's time to spice things up. Neglecting what your characters put in their mouths is a massive missed opportunity in cultural world building specifically. And that's what I want to talk about today. Building out a culture's diet, what that says about them, and how you can use it to show the reader your culture in an immersive way. Welcome to another episode of Just in Time World Building with your host, Marie Mullaney. So, let's dig into the first course, the gastronomic foundation, or what food can tell us about a culture beyond just they eat to survive. First off, food tells you a lot about the local fauna and flora that a culture has. Food grows where the land allows it, or doesn't. Staple ingredients reflect geography, climate, and even historical migrations. A culture surrounded by fertile floodplains will likely develop rice or wheat-based diets. Mountain people might rely more on preserved meats, root vegetables, or goat milk products. In an island nation, you can expect seafood, preserved fish, and maybe seaweed. The crops and animals available shape what's possible. Then tradition, taste, and religion refine what's preferable. Think of the hobbits in The Lord of the Rings. Their love of mushrooms, ale, and second breakfasts tells you everything about them. They live in a fertile, temperate region. They're agriculturally self-sufficient, and importantly, they have enough peace and prosperity to enjoy eating. Their food isn't about survival. It's about comfort, ritual, and community. You can almost taste the pastoral calm of the Shire just by reading their menu. Contrast that with the food culture of the Stormlight Archive, where Voran nations divide food by gender. Men eat spicy food while women eat sweet food. And this isn't just a quirky world-building detail. It reinforces gender roles, religious beliefs, and even culinary taboos. It adds to the undercurrent of every shared meal, literally reinforcing identity. Then there's economic indicators. Is food scarce or abundant? If your people are scraping by, they'll prize efficiency, preservation, and resilience. In harsh settings, you'll find hardtack, dried meat, porridge, pickled vegetables, and so on. Case in point, across the Bay of Bothnia in Sweden, they have the most horrifying dish in the world called surströmming, which comes from a fish that they preserved through the harsh winters by pickling it, a herring. They pickled herring. And yes, it's exactly as grim as it sounds. And if one more Swede tells me it only smells bad, it tastes fine, I am going to force feed them salmiakki ice cream doused in salmiakki liquor until they cry uncle. Anyway, if food is abundant, you might see innovations in things like baking with elaborate pastries, or in spices, or fermentation techniques that turn excess into art. Opulent feasts can signal an empire or conquest or cultural pride. A great example of both what's available and need-driven cuisine is delicious in The Dungeon or Dungeon Meshi. It's an anime where the adventurers literally cook and eat the monsters they slay in the dungeon, but it's more than just culinary comedy. Every dish that they prepare, from roasted slime to basilisk hot pot, reveals the ecology of the dungeon and the psychology of the characters and even the economic realities of their world. Having come off second best to a red dragon, they don't have a lot of coin, and so dungeon survivalist cooking it is. Even in our world, food is foundational to cultural identity. Think of rice in many Asian cultures. It's not just a side dish, it's symbolic of life and continuity. There's even a traditional greeting, "Have you eaten rice today?" Or consider how bread in Mediterranean and European history became a metaphor for civilization and divine providence. "Give us this day our daily bread" is in that prayer for a reason. Even booze comes into this. France makes wine because they have a great wine growing region. Central and Eastern Europe make beer because have you seen their wheat fields? Finns make hardtack because nothing else gets you through the winter up here, especially when your neighbors are eating suurströmming. So, when you're world building your culture, think about what raw food is available to your culture, how long their lean season, their winter is, and how they preserve food for that lean season. In a tropical paradise, this is way less of a concern than if you're in the far north or south of your world. So consider your climate and the impact that that has had on food preservation within your culture. But of course, that's only the foundation. How you eat is almost as telling as what you eat. So let's talk about dining rituals and social hierarchies. First up, etiquette as law. Table manners aren't just about not grossing out your dinner companions. They're social code in action. Who gets served first? Who speaks during meals? Are you allowed to touch the food with your hands? Or is that scandalous? Are certain dishes reserved only for nobles or priests or warriors? Maybe there are utensils only the elite can use, say gold-plated knives or elaborately carved chopsticks, and gods forbid a commoner is caught holding one. These rituals reveal power dynamics, respect, and hidden expectations in a culture. A simple act at the table can carry massive symbolic weight, especially in highly hierarchical societies. And to illustrate just how potent that symbolism can be, let me share a personal story. I used to play a lot of live action role playing games, and one of the most memorable ones was a once off LARP that we played in the setting of Legend of the Five Rings, which is a world heavily inspired by East Asian cultures, particularly feudal Japan. During this LARP, we were all playing various samurai, and as part of this immersive experience, we were actually having dinner in character, physically eating as people in character. And we were eating with chopsticks as, one does in Japan. And one player took her chopsticks and stabbed them upright into her bowl of rice. And the entire room just went dead silent. Because in that setting, placing chopsticks vertically into food is a dire insult. It's akin to accusing the host of poisoning the meal. It is an unspoken declaration of war. And because we, as players, all understood the significance, the game instantly shifted. That one small gesture set off a chain of social fallout, political maneuvering, and veiled threats. The host couldn't ignore it. It demanded a response. That single act was a dramatic power play, and one of the most unforgettable role-playing moments I've ever had. And all that because of chopsticks and what they represented in that moment. And this is what I mean when I say rituals matter. Eating customs carry meaning that's often invisible until it's broken. So give some thoughts to how your people eat, as well as what they eat. Think about whether meals are communal or private. In egalitarian societies, you might find shared tables, family-style meals, maybe even cultural expectations around sharing food. In more stratified worlds, dining could be deeply segregated by class. The nobility dine alone in solemn silence, while commoners eat in raucous taverns. One group eats for ceremony, the other for survival and community. You could even invent a culture where eating certain foods in public is taboo. Perhaps high-ranking individuals must eat alone in sanctified spaces, or only priests can consume certain sacred ingredients. Eating outside those bounds could signal rebellion, impurity, or even blasphemy. First on the list of taboo foods in my kingdom is suurstromming. I'm just saying. Before, before we talk about food production and history, give me a few minutes to tell you about world-building blueprints. This is a book I wrote that will take you from zero to hero in world building, including designing your story. And it's not just theory. Inside this book, you will find exercises and worksheets like this one, which actually comes with a downloadable Excel model that lets you map out your culture's material conditions. Or this one, which lets you build out a full ecosystem for your culture so that you can figure out exactly what kind of foods they have available to them. The book is available as a PDF on my website now and will be available as a physical book in February 2026 or March maybe, after the Kickstarter fulfills. There is a glorious hardback in full color like this one, and also a paperback like this one, which is black and white and which is somewhat cheaper and lighter, and also has all of the same exercises. There is also an audiobook version and a reflowable layout ebook version, which is available on my site. And if you buy the audiobook version, you get the ebook at half price. Details are on my website down below, or I guess you can go to Amazon and buy it there if you really must. Alrighty, back to food production and history. Now that we've savored how food reflects culture and ritual, let's go one layer deeper. How it's made and what stories it tells long after that food has been eaten. And let's start with food production, because food doesn't just appear on the table. It's the result of labor, environment, and infrastructure. From farm to table, your world's practices will shape its social structure. A society built on intensive farming will likely support dense urban populations and bureaucracies to manage food distribution. But a culture relying on foraging, hunting, or nomadic herding might value mobility, adaptability, and intimate ecological knowledge. What people eat is as much about how they grow it as it is why they grow it. Think about labor and hierarchy. Who tills the fields? Who slaughters the animals? Who makes the wine? And who gets to drink it? Food chains, pun very much intended, reveal class systems. A society where the ruling class never touches raw ingredients, only the plated final product, is saying something very clear about power, purity, and privilege. And if those at the bottom are overworked and underfed, you've got a built-in tension ready to explode in that society. Maybe even a bread-fueled revolution. And check out my videos on revolution and rebellion in the information card. Now, throw in technology into this world. Want to imagine a futuristic society? Picture one where food is 3D printed or grown in labs. Maybe people consume nutrient paste by default, but the elite dining clubs still obsess over extinct heirloom tomatoes or real beef. Maybe artificial food has become so advanced that people have ritualized the act of chewing or even hold fast just to remember what hunger used to be like. That alone could fuel a dozen subcultures. By the way, I did a video on post-scarcity economy with 3D printing food and so on. Check that out in the information card. But food is about more than economics. It's also about what a culture remembers. So let's talk about cuisine as a chronicle and how a meal becomes a marker of myth, memory, or misery. Wars, migration, trade, famine, they all leave fingerprints on the menu. Why does this culture use so many spices? Maybe because their ancestors once controlled the spice routes, or because spices helped mask the taste of meat going off during lean times. Maybe their most cherished holiday dish was born during a siege, where they boiled a stew from whatever they had left. Today, it's a symbol of unity. Back then, it was survival in a pot. And sometimes that memory of the event sticks. So let's talk about that national trauma known as surströmming. So this is Swedish fermented herring, as I said. This delicacy, and I use that term very, very lightly, exists because people once needed to preserve fish through brutal winters without access to very much salt and without access to the refrigeration technologies we have. So they buried herring in barrels, they let it rot and ferment, and they ate it not to die. And now it's a traditional food and one of the foulest smells on the planet, truly. If you open a can of it indoors, you're either going to lose friends or declare war or both. And it's definitely a tourist killer. You can check out videos about it on YouTube. Sorry, Sweden. You know I love you, but that stuff. Anyway, religious practices also shape cuisine. Maybe a culture fasts for 40 days to reenact the trials of a prophet. Maybe they only eat white food on holy days to symbolize purity, like milk and rice and fish belly. Or maybe they bake a layered cake on their creation day, where each layer symbolizes an element, earth, fire, wind, and spirit, and it's only served after a ritual blessing. Which brings us to one real-world example that I adore personally, which is hot cross buns. Making and eating hot cross buns is a tradition of breaking the fast of Good Friday and commemorates the crucifixion of Jesus. It comes to us, probably, from 1592 and the reign of Elizabeth I of England, when the London Clerk of Markets issued a decree forbidding the sale of spiced buns and other spiced breads except at burials on Good Friday or at Christmas. Odd what they choose to forbid, isn't it? Anyway, the first definite record of hot cross buns comes from a London street cry. Good Friday comes this month, the old woman runs, when 1 or 2 a penny hot cross buns, which appeared in Poor Robin's Almanac for 1733. And the point is, hot cross buns have got history, and you can apply the same kind of history to food in your world. Imagine a roast served once a year, made from a beast that your culture's founder supposedly slew, or a bitter soup brewed only at funerals, where each herb represents a kind of grief. Or maybe a stew served at weddings that includes 7 different ingredients, each chosen for fertility, prosperity, or luck, and each spoonful is a page in your world's history. Or flip it around. Imagine a dish so tied to tragedy, no one eats it anymore. It's banned, forgotten. The ingredients grow wild but are left untouched. Until, of course, some reckless young protagonist cooks it and unwittingly invokes a memory no one is ready to taste again. And lastly, don't forget about cross-cultural sharing. Cultures come into contact with each other all the time, sometimes aggressively, sometimes peacefully. And often one culture's dish ends up in another culture's cuisine, like curry, which the English certainly didn't learn to cook in their spice-bereft rainy island. So, consider how trade and cross-cultural pollination and even colonization affects the gastronomical history of your culture as well. When you're designing your fantasy world's cuisine, don't just list your ingredients. Ask yourself, what events does this dish remember? Who eats it with reverence and who refuses to touch it? What smells like home to your character? What takes them back to their childhood? And what, like suurstroming, smells like history punching you in the face? Food isn't just flavor. It's a feeling, a hierarchy, a history, even a belief system. From how it's grown, to how it's served, to how it's remembered, every bite your characters take can immerse your reader in a world that feels alive and layered. So use your food to make your culture's history and material come alive in the perception of your reader. If you enjoyed this video, drop a food emoji of some kind in the comments, and while you're down there, hit the hype or thumbs up button, or both if you're feeling super generous. As always, a huge thank you to the channel members of Just in Time Worldbuilding, especially the Stone tier, Jeff Hicks, Epic, Laura Bones 79, A. Walyard, Neil Buckley, Necromancer JM, Katie Kofi Mug, and Tony Lamano, along with the Wood tier and Straw tier members. Your help allows me to keep making these videos, and I am very, very grateful. If you would like to support the channel, one free way to do it is simply to watch another video. If you enjoyed this video, you will probably enjoy my video on 7 tiny details which have a huge impact on world building, which you can check out right now on screen, or you can follow whatever the algorithm is recommending to you from my back catalogue. And I will see you soon for another episode of Just in Time World Building.